The reason that I'm dwelling a little bit on this point is that I'm making a general plea, I guess, in our discussions here and our thinking generally about the clean energy future to realize that it's much broader than just what's going to happen with the cleanliness of energy commodities or with the efficiency with which we use energy commodities. It's about a transformation that will have to take place if we are going to achieve a clean energy society in which the way we meet basic human needs and amenities and services shifts in very fundamental ways that will require much lower levels of energy commodities in the first place, notwithstanding how efficiently the energy commodity technologies, the fuel and electricity using technologies use that. That is the clean energy future. That is the landscape on which all societies must work together. This is not about mini powers and superpowers. This is about a collective effort by what has become a globalized economy and a globalized society to identify the ways in which we can provide a sustainable, prosperous future for people with radically lower levels of energy commodity consumption than has been the case in the past. And if you think of it that way, the opportunities are much larger than if you restrict the discussion to fuel and electricity consumption, and the opportunities for public policy in particular are much larger. I've used up my time. Can I briefly touch on the last couple of cars of the train?
Absolutely.
I think they've come completely uncoupled and are rolling across the farmer's field here, but one had to do with advantages. So with those words of context, are there particular unique advantages that Canada has? Yes, we're a very large country, so therefore we have more biomass per capita, more solar per capita, more hydroelectricity per capita than almost any other country on Earth. It's not by itself a slam dunk advantage. After all, you only have to look at the countries that succeeded since World War II in the fossil fuel era to recognize that simply having fossil fuels was not a precondition for being a superpower in that era. We also are a cold country. It's an advantage. The technology of buildings has always been more advanced in the northern countries because it has to be to survive the winters, and because it makes sense to invest more in building technology because the savings and the benefits over the life of the building are that much greater in northern climates. So our cold climate is actually an advantage going into this world in that sense. Those are a couple of physical advantages. Socially, we're a rich country. That immediately springs to mind. If a country like Canada can't get it together to make the necessary investments and make the necessary commitments to get on a transition to a clean energy society, then it seems to me it's unlikely that a global transition will be feasible. We're also a pragmatic country. This could end up being an extremely important advantage as we move forward. At least historically, we have not shied away from using public investment where either the risk or the return was unacceptable to private capital in order to get a job done that needed to be done. And the transition to an environmentally sustainable future is full of examples where it's extremely difficult to envisage the necessary investments being made without the public investor at the table. And if you're in a country that has an ideological opposition to that, that's going to be a disadvantage in this future. So I think it's actually an advantage in Canada that we have a history of pragmatism when it comes to the split between the public and the private sectors and building the type of society that we want. And I think a willingness to take the regulatory approach where it seems like the most practical way to get the job done. It's interesting to note, for example, that in terms of, except for that first factor I mentioned, which is this huge transition that's going on in our economies that's taking us in the direction of a cleaner energy system, the second largest factor has been regulation. Performance regulation of appliances, office equipment, cars is a remarkable success story throughout the Western countries in what it has achieved in increasing efficiency levels and moving us in the direction of a cleaner energy future. And once again, in a pragmatic country, if you're willing to acknowledge the fact that where regulations seem to get the job done cheaper and quicker than a more convoluted market-based approach, then do it that way. And there will be, I'm sure, and the more I think about this, the more convinced I am, an increased role for regulation in bringing about the clean energy future.